What happens when America's sweetheart reaches her breaking point on live television? When the cameras are rolling and millions are watching, sometimes the mask slips and we see the real person underneath. Today, we're diving into one of the most shocking moments in morning television history, where Kelly Clarkson completely lost it during what was supposed to be a routine promotional interview. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think really pushed Kelly over the edge. The Today Show studio was buzzing with its usual morning energy. Coffee cups steamed on desks, production assistants scurried around with clipboards, and the familiar hum of live television filled the air. Craig Melvin sat across from Kelly Clarkson. In the interview area, both of them lit perfectly by the professional lighting setup. To viewers at home, everything looked normal, polished, and ready for what should have been a pleasant chat about Kelly's latest projects. "We're back in 30 seconds, called out the floor director, his voice cutting through the ambient noise. Kelly shifted in her chair, adjusting her blazer and checking her reflection in the monitor positioned just off camera. She'd done this routine hundreds of times before, promoting albums, tours, and her talk show appearances. This was supposed to be easy. Craig glanced over his notes one more time, though he barely needed them. The interview was mapped out in his head, standard questions about her music, her personal life, maybe a funny anecdote or two to keep things light. He'd interviewed Kelly before and found her to be professional, warm, and always good for a genuine laugh. Nothing in his preparation suggested this morning would be any different. And we're live in 5, 4, 3. The floor director's countdown ended with silent finger points for 2 and 1. Welcome back to Today. I'm Craig Melvin, and I'm here with Grammy-winning superstar Kelly Clarkson. Craig began with his practiced television smile. "Kelly, thanks for being here this morning." "Thanks for having me, Craig. Always love being on the show," Kelly replied, her media training evident in her polished response. But if you looked closely, there was something in her eyes, a tension that hadn't been there in previous appearances. "So let's talk about your new album. You've been working on this project for over 2 years now. Tell us what fans can expect," Creig continued, settling into his hosting rhythm. Kelly leaned forward slightly, her hands clasped together. "Well, this album is really personal to me. It's about growth, about finding your voice again after going through major life changes. I think anyone who's had to rebuild themselves will really connect with these songs." "Speaking of rebuilding," Craig said, consulting his notes, "you've been very open about your divorce proceedings. How has that experience influenced your music?" The question hung in the air for a moment longer than it should have. Kelly's smile faltered just slightly, but she recovered quickly. "You know, Craig, I've always been someone who processes life through music. When you go through difficult times, you either let them break you or you find a way to turn that pain into something meaningful, right? And I think that's what your fans love about you, that authenticity. But I have to ask, and I know this, might be sensitive, but there have been reports about the custody arrangements and some of the financial disputes. How do you balance being so open in your music while protecting your children's privacy?" Kelly's posture changed subtly. Her shoulders tensed, and she sat back in her chair. "Well, as I've said before, my kids are my priority. Everything I do is with them in mind." Craig nodded, but he wasn't done. "Of course, and I think everyone respects that. But when you're writing songs about, quote, learning to trust again, end quote, and dealing with, quote, lies and broken promises, end quote, aren't you essentially giving us a window into what went wrong in your marriage?" "I think art has always been about taking personal experiences and making them universal," Kelly responded, her voice taking on a slightly sharper edge. "That's what artists do." "But Kelly, come on," Craig said, with a laugh that didn't quite reach his eyes, "when you sing about someone who, quote, took everything and left you with nothing, end quote. In a song called Court Date Blues, you're not exactly speaking in metaphors, are you?" Kelly blinked, clearly caught off guard. "I'm sorry, what song are you referring to? Because I don't have a song called Court Date Blues on my album." Craig looked down at his notes, his confidence wavering for just a moment. "Well, according to our research team." "Your research team got it wrong," Kelly interrupted, her voice now noticeably cooler. "And honestly, Craig, I came here to talk about my music, not to relitigate my personal life on national television." "Of course, Of course, Creig said, trying to regain his footing. But you have to understand, your fans are curious. They care about you. And when you're going through such a public situation, public, Kelly's voice rose slightly. Creig, I've been as private as possible given the circumstances. I've never once publicly disparaged my ex-husband. I've never aired our dirty laundry in interviews. I've tried to handle this with as much dignity as I can muster. The energy in the studio had shifted completely. Camera operators glanced at each other nervously. The floor director stepped closer to the interview area, sensing something was about to go off the rails. Creig, perhaps sensing he was losing control of the interview, decided to double down. But Kelly, isn't it true that there were allegations of financial impropriety? Sources close to the situation have suggested. Stop. Kelly held up her hand, her eyes flashing with anger. Just stop right there, Creig. What sources? What allegations? Are you seriously going to sit there and repeat tabloid gossip as if it's fact? Well, these are reports from reputable entertainment journalists. Reputable. Kelly laughed, but there was no humor in it. Creig, do you have children? The question seemed to come out of nowhere, and Creig looked genuinely confused. I do, yes. Then you should understand that there are lines you don't cross. There are things you don't say about someone's family, about their children, based on what some unnamed source whispered to a blogger. The studio had gone completely quiet, except for the low hum of equipment. Even the production assistants had stopped moving, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Creig tried to salvage the situation. Kelly, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not trying to attack you or your family. I'm just asking the questions that I think our viewers, our viewers. Kelly stood up abruptly. The wireless microphone pack clipped to her blazer, pulling slightly at the cord. Creig, our viewers tuned in to hear about music. They tuned in to maybe learn something new about an artist they support. They didn't tune in to watch you ambush someone with made-up song titles and unsubstantiated rumors. Creig remained seated, but his composure was clearly shaken. I assure you, Kelly, there was no ambush intended. These questions were submitted to your publicist ahead of time. That's a lie. Kelly's words cut through the air like a blade. My publicist specifically said this would focus on the new album and my upcoming tours. At no point did anyone mention that you'd be bringing up custody battles or financial disputes or whatever fiction your research team cobbled together from gossip sites. The tension in the studio was now palpable. Production crew members exchanged worried glances as Kelly Clarkson stood towering over Craig Melvin, her usually warm demeanor completely transformed. The morning show host shifted uncomfortably in his chair, realizing he had pushed one of America's most beloved entertainers past her breaking point. Kelly, please, let's just take a breath here, Creig said, his voice taking on a placating tone that only seemed to fuel her anger further. Don't you dare tell me to take a breath, Kelly shot back, her voice trembling with rage. You sit there with your little note card of lies and then have the audacity to tell me to calm down when I call you out on it. Creig looked toward the control room, clearly hoping for some kind of intervention, but the red light on the camera remained steady. They were still live, broadcasting this meltdown to millions of viewers across the country. Look, I think we should probably go to commercial, Creig suggested weakly. Oh, no, Kelly said, raising her hand again. You wanted to have this conversation on air, so let's have it. You want to talk about my divorce? Fine. Let's talk about how you just completely fabricated a song title, Court Date. Blues. Really, Creig? Did your research team just make that up on the spot, or did you come up with that little gem yourself? Creig's face was flushing red now. There may have been some confusion in our notes. Confusion? Kelly laughed bitterly. That's what you're calling it? You just accused me of writing songs about court dates and custody battles based on absolutely nothing? Do you have any idea how irresponsible that is? Kelly, I apologize if there was an error. If there was an error? She was incredulous now. Creig, you just told millions of people that I wrote a song called Court Date Blues about my divorce. That song doesn't exist. It never existed. But now it's out there in the universe because you couldn't be bothered to fact-check your ambush questions. The floor director was now frantically gesturing to Creig, trying to get him to wrap up the segment, but Kelly wasn't finished. And you want to know what's really rich about this whole thing? Kelly continued, her voice getting louder. You Sit there talking about protecting children's privacy while simultaneously trying to drag my kids into this mess. You think they don't hear this stuff? You think their classmates won't see clips of their mom being grilled about custody arrangements on national television? Creig tried to interrupt. That wasn't my intention. I don't care about your intentions, Kelly snapped. I care about your actions, and your actions today have been completely unprofessional and frankly disgusting. The word disgusting seemed to hit Creig like a physical blow. His media training was failing him completely as he struggled to find a response. Kelly, I think you're overreacting. Overreacting? Kelly's voice reached a new octave. Creig, are you married? Yes, I am. Good for you. Now imagine your marriage falls apart. Imagine it's messy and painful and you're trying to keep your family together while lawyers and judges make decisions about your children's lives. Got that picture in your head? Creig nodded reluctantly. Now imagine you go on a talk show to promote a work project, something you've poured your heart into, and instead of talking about that, the host starts making up lies about songs you never wrote and asking you about financial disputes that may or may not exist. Still think I'm overreacting? The studio had fallen into an eerie silence. Even the usual background noise of a television production had stopped. Everyone was frozen, watching this unprecedented moment unfold. Creig made another attempt to salvage the interview. Kelly, I really do apologize. Perhaps we could start over and focus on the album. Start over? Kelly shook her head in disbelief. Creig, you can't unsay what you just said. You can't take back the fact that you just made up a song title on live television and used it to try to humiliate me. Do you understand that? I wasn't trying to humiliate anyone. Then what were you trying to do? Kelly demanded. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you decided to turn this into some kind of gotcha journalism moment at my expense. Creig looked desperately toward the control room again. We're going to take a quick commercial break, are we? Kelly asked sarcastically. Or are you just saying that because you've realized you've completely screwed this up and now you want to run away? I'm trying to be professional here, Kelly. Professional. Kelly's laugh was sharp and humorless. Creig, nothing about this has been professional. Professional would have been asking me about my new music. Professional would have been asking about my tour dates or my creative process. Professional would not have been ambushing me with made-up song titles and invasive questions about my personal life. Creig was sweating now, his carefully styled hair beginning to look disheveled under the studio lights. I understand you're upset. Upset doesn't begin to cover it, Kelly interrupted. I'm furious, I'm embarrassed, and I'm disappointed. I've been coming on this show for years, Creig. Years. I've always been professional, always been gracious, always given you good television. And this is how you repay that relationship. The betrayal in her voice was unmistakable, and for the first time since the confrontation began, Creig seemed to grasp the gravity of what he had done. Kelly, save it, she said, reaching for the microphone pack at her waist. I'm done with this interview. I'm done with this show, and I'm definitely done with you. As she began to unhook her microphone, Creig made a final, desperate attempt to maintain control of the situation. Kelly, please don't leave. We can fix this. We can have a productive conversation about your music. Kelly paused, her hand still on the microphone pack, and looked at Creig with an expression of pure incredulity. Fix this, she repeated slowly. Creig, you just spent the last 10 minutes trying to destroy my reputation on live television based on information your team apparently pulled out of thin air. How exactly do you propose to fix that? Creig had no answer. His mouth opened and closed soundlessly as he realized there was no coming back from this moment. That's what I thought, Kelly said quietly, but her words carried clearly through the now silent studio. You know what the really sad part is, Creig? I actually used to respect you. I thought you were one of the good ones in this business. Turns out, I was wrong about that too. The silence that followed Kelly's devastating words seemed to stretch on forever. Craig Melvin sat frozen in his chair, his face a mixture of shock and humiliation, while Kelly stood over him like a force of nature that had just torn through everything in its path. The red recording light on the camera continued to blink steadily, capturing every second of this career-defining moment for both of them. You know what, Creig? Kelly said, her voice now carrying a cold, calculated edge that was somehow more terrifying than her earlier outburst. Since you seem so interested in my personal life, let me share something really personal with you and your viewers. Creig looked up at her with genuine fear in his eyes, clearly bracing for whatever bombshell she was about to drop. When I was going through my divorce, when I was sitting in lawyers' offices and trying to explain to my children why their world was falling apart, do you know what kept me going? Kelly asked, her voice steady but filled with emotion. Kelly, you don't have to. I kept going because I believed that most people in this world are decent, she continued, ignoring his interruption. I believed that if I handled things with grace and dignity, if I focused on my work and my children and tried to heal privately, that people would respect that. I believed that the media, people like you, would understand that there are boundaries, that there are lines you don't cross. She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. But you just proved me wrong, didn't you, Creig? You just showed me and everyone watching that some people will say anything, make up any story, hurt anyone just to get a reaction, just to create a moment. Creig tried once more to salvage something from the wreckage. Kelly, I never meant to hurt you. That was never the goal here. What was the goal then? Kelly asked, tilting her head slightly. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you wanted to create drama. You wanted to see if you could make me crack. Well, congratulations, Creig. Mission accomplished. The floor director was now making increasingly frantic gestures toward the cameras, but the crew seemed transfixed by what they were witnessing. This wasn't just bad television. This was a cultural moment happening in real time. You want to know what's really ironic about all this? Kelly continued, her voice taking on an almost conversational tone that was more unsettling than her shouting had been. I actually was excited to come on today. I was looking forward to talking about my music, sharing some stories from the recording process, maybe even performing a song for your viewers. This album means everything to me, Creig. It's my way of turning the hardest period of my life into something beautiful, something that might help other people who are going through similar struggles. Creig's shoulders sagged as the full weight of what he had destroyed began to sink in. But instead of celebrating that, instead of giving your audience something uplifting and meaningful, you decided to turn this into an interrogation. You decided to make me the villain in some story you've concocted in your head, Kelly said, her voice growing stronger with each word. I don't think you're a villain, don't you? Kelly challenged, because everything about your line of questioning suggested otherwise. You came in here with made-up song titles, unnamed sources, and leading questions designed to make me look bad. If that's not treating someone like a villain, I don't know what is. Creig ran a hand through his hair, his professional composure completely shattered. Look, maybe I approached this wrong, maybe. Kelly's eyebrows shot up. Creig, there's no maybe about it. You completely botched this from the first question. And the worst part is, you don't even seem to understand why. Then explain it to me, Creig said, a note of desperation creeping into his voice. Kelly stared at him for a long moment, as if deciding whether he was worth the effort. Finally, she spoke. When someone trusts you with their story, with their platform, with their reputation, you have a responsibility to handle that trust with care. You don't ambush them, you don't lie about their work, you don't drag their children into adult problems, and you definitely don't make up facts to support whatever narrative you've decided to push. She finally unclipped her microphone pack completely and set it down on the table between them with a definitive click. But here's what really gets me, Creig. Even after all this, even after you've shown your true colors, you're still trying to make this my fault. You're still trying to frame this as me overreacting instead of you behaving unprofessionally. That tells me everything I need to know about who you really are. Creig opened his mouth to protest, but Kelly held up a hand to stop him. I'm not done, she said firmly. You asked me earlier about protecting my children's privacy while being authentic in my music. Well, here's your answer. I write about universal emotions, about healing, about finding strength after betrayal, because those are experiences that transcend any one person's story. But what you did today, making up specific details and trying to force me to confirm or deny gossip, that's the exact opposite of authenticity. That's exploitation. The studio remained dead silent as Kelly picked up her purse and slung it over her shoulder. You know what the saddest part about all this is, Creig? I actually feel sorry for you, because somewhere along the way, you forgot that the people you interview are human beings with real feelings, real families, and real lives that extend far beyond whatever entertainment value you think you can extract from them. She turned to face the cameras directly, addressing the viewers at home for the first time since the interview began. To everyone watching, I want you to know that my new album is something I'm incredibly proud of. It's honest, it's hopeful, and it's a testament to the fact that you can survive anything if you hold on to who you are at your core. I hope you'll give it a listen, not because of this circus, but because I believe it has something meaningful to offer." Then she turned back to Creig, who was staring at his hands, unable to meet her gaze. "As for you, Creig, I hope you learned something from this. I hope you remember that behind every story, every headline, every interview, there's a real person who deserves to be treated with basic respect and dignity. Maybe next time you'll do better." With that, Kelly Clarkson walked off the Today Show set, leaving Craig Melvin sitting alone in the wreckage of what would undoubtedly go down as one of the most disastrous interviews in morning television history. The cameras continued to roll. As Creig sat in stunned silence, the weight of his professional humiliation settling over him like a heavy blanket. In the control room, producers scrambled to figure out how to salvage the remaining airtime, but the damage was already done. Kelly Clarkson had just delivered a masterclass in standing up for yourself, and Craig Melvin had provided an equally powerful demonstration of how quickly a career can be derailed by poor judgment and worse preparation. The aftermath of this confrontation would reverberate through the entertainment industry for months to come. But in that moment, in that studio, there was only silence and the sobering realization that some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. So what do you think? Did Kelly Clarkson go too far? Or was Craig Melvin completely out of line with his approach to this interview? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories from the world of entertainment.